Aloha, friends and family, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Embodied Healing Self. So, this week's guest is Ianne Celeste Riviera. And as I say her name, I'm just like letting it roll off my tongue because she is just as beautiful in person as her name sounds. And we actually met in January of this year, 2020, in San Diego at the Healer's Code event with Carrie Nola, whom you guys might remember on my podcast, episode 55, Illuminating the Shadows of Abundance. And I love to share the story of how I connect with people because I just get so humbled by like synchronicities and coincidences. And we were sitting at lunch and we sat down and started talking, and I just remember looking at her and just thinking like, and I look at you, I just see this like thread just coming down that just like ties everything together in life. And she's like, oh, well, that's the name of my coaching company is One Thread Coaching. I'm like, tell me more. What do you do? So Ianne is a holistic pleasure coach. And she is here to teach us about a pleasure revolution that is so needed. And I will just share with you all, my listeners, that this is a total growth edge for me. This is such a growth edge for me to step into, to have this conversation. And I see and witness and realize like how much juiciness and goodness and empowerment is really in this conversation, which is why I'm very excited to bring this all to you. So Ianne has 14 years of experience in scientific research with a master's in psychology and studying erotica and healing through Columbia University, plus 7 years as a spiritual and meditation guide. She's also a yoga teacher. And she brings this unique special blend of science and spirituality with a twist on sound healing. And I say that because she's also the host of her own podcast, Pleasure Revolution, I believe it is. And the sound of her voice is a healing tool alone. So I invite you to listen to her podcast. She starts out with a little meditation and goes into some story and some share about the importance of sensuality and pleasure, and reminding us to come back to our body wisdom, that pleasure is our birthright. So it is with great joy and pleasure that I welcome you today, the beautiful Ianne Celeste Riviera. So thank you for being here today.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. This is such a blessing, and I've been looking forward to connecting with you in some way, shape, or form since we first met. So I'm happy that our passions could align in a meaningful way.
Me too. So I want to start by just sharing that when I listened to your podcast, the very first show, you talk about your pleasure story. And I realized part of the reason I was so drawn to the work that you're doing is because I am writing mine right now. And I know that I'm not alone in this. I know that I'm a woman in my 40s. I am discovering, or I should say rediscovering, or coming home to even just embodying and embracing the feminine energy in me within one. So healing that aspect of it, but also healing my relationship and my connection to my body wisdom, which is a language that we both use. And I teach and talk a lot about body wisdom. And I actually found myself talking about joy a lot. And then when I heard the word pleasure, I was like, well, that has a different vibration to it. That's a different word. And I got really curious about like, what is pleasure? So I want to invite you to just share what that means to you, and also how you came to be in the space of really owning that this is what you're here to do.
Oh my gosh, that is a very special question. So first of all, when I talk about pleasure specifically as this energetic force in our healing process, I use an acronym for pleasure. So pleasure is the presence, loving energy of awareness softly unveiling and revealing everything. And that ties into my story of how I came to be embodying this role as a pleasure guide, a pleasure coach, talking about pleasure and really believing in the power of pleasure as integral to our healing process and our well-being. I had a experience a few years ago where a girlfriend of mine called me up and said, "Hey girl, you want to come and it's my mom's birthday. We're doing a spa retreat at my house. I would love for you to come and lead us in a meditation." So I lead them in a beautiful meditation where they connect mother to daughter. And they invite me to stay the rest of the day, which is amazing. It's like, "Oh, you want me to be a part of your birthday celebration? Okay." Delicious food. We have mimosa type drinks, and great conversation. And one of the little games we kind of played was, it was the beginning of the year, it was around February, and they had a bunch of words in a hat this is a tradition that they had, where they would take a word out of this hat, a bunch of random words, and that would become your word for the year. So they're like, "Hey, you want to try, Ianne?" I was like, "Sure, why not?" So I reach in and I pick out listen. And I thought, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." I was in my master's program in psychology and education. And I thought, okay, yeah, I just need to listen more, better, whatever, active listening. Okay, I got the message, universe, thank you. And my girlfriend was like, "You know what? It's never what you think it's going to be." So I kind of left it kind of in one of the back burners, but on simmer in my mind. And as I was writing my thesis and coming into kind of the academic knowledge of eroticism and sexuality in our bodies, it started to dawn on me that listening to my body was something that I had done very tangentially, very superficially. There were layers that were calling to me to be engaged with that I didn't know were there. And it's through listening to the body that you access those deep layers. And so I realized, oh my God, listen is the word. Listen is the word to empower me to connect to my body. And it opened up just these amazing doors of clarity and intuition, specifically in what I was doing with my thesis. That in and of itself. If anyone has done a thesis or written done a big project, there's so much internal turmoil and that happens sometimes. But listening to my body became the compass to navigating what felt right in my thesis. And that's how it came to be. And that's the place then where I came from as I decided, okay, you know what, this is really special. Pleasure, our sexual energy, eroticism, which that's a whole nother topic we can talk about, but eroticism is the energy of intention, this very seedling vibration that's within every single living thing. Every single thing that we observe in the natural world has the intention to be, and that's eroticism. We have that. Anyway, that was a side note. Learning all of these things, I navigated through these things through my body, and that's where I come from today. And it's just become louder and louder and louder because I'm present with my body. So this acronym, coming back to the acronym of pleasure, being in the present moment with your body, there's a softness that your body feels as you settle into the moment, and you open and you learn. And through the mind-body connection, as you're learning more about yourself in the present moment, and it could be very, very, very subtle. Doesn't have to be a huge aha moments. Even when we feel like nothing is happening, there's always something that's being revealed. And as you're learning, your body is physiologically experiencing pleasure. And so what does that mean? It means that your body softens, your body relaxes, your lungs open up, your muscles relax. and it receives the information, it receives the knowledge, it receives yourself. And that reinforces the mind to continue to open, then reinforces the body to continue to open. And all of that is the experience and pleasure of coming to know yourself. And that's why I feel so passionate about talking about pleasure in this way, because it's been put in such a tiny, 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 tiny little box and pushed in the corner in the back of the closet that's underneath the stairwell. Mm-hmm. And we have forgotten, not that we've forgotten that it is, our bodies are powerful tools for our healing, for healing our communities, and the pleasure that we experience as a result of healing ourselves is the joy that transmutes out to other people, which is what makes our work, when it comes from an embodied place, even more powerful.
Yes.
Answer.
Beautiful answer. And thank you for opening our eyes to a different view on what pleasure can hold for us, because I do think that it's not a word that we hear often, and yet it's such a high vibration word. Like, just, you know, if you live, we talked about sound healing, and so everything for me has a resonance and a vibration. It's like, whoa, that's even more than joy for me. Yeah. And a couple of things that you have talked about that I've gained from your podcast and your live, your Instagram live feed, is that you talk about sensual presence as embodying the authentic self. And as you were speaking, I was hearing the word receive before you said it. And I really noticed that it really comes down to our ability to just open and receive. And
yeah.
That's vulnerable.
Yeah.
It takes trust.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And presence, because what I notice in the women that I work with and in my own self, which they're usually reflecting back to me, is that we actually have to choose to slow down enough to listen. So that's step number one.
Yes.
So the awareness is there where we slow down enough to listen. But then there's that space of like, we can slow down to listen, but to actually open up to receive is a totally different level of healing.
It is.
And you talk about feeling the feels is the healing. So I'm wondering if you can take us blending your science and spirituality together and help us maybe understand. I don't know if it's like an energetic or a physiological thing, but there's something happening in the body in that space of awareness to receiving that feels to me, and I'm asking you as the teacher of this, but that's where it feels to me that the energy shift starts to really happen, right? Like awareness is part of it, but that's like on the surface, and then there's this internal sort of shift that begins to happen. So feeling the feels is the healing.
Yeah. I'm going to try and think of I'm going to try and use a metaphor here to talk about this. So let's start off with what you're experiencing. We have been unable, because of all of the things that have been placed on us, all of these blocks, all of these filters, to experience our fullest self. We've been unable to experience that. And that's what healing is. It's taking off the layers so our fullness comes more to the forefront, and we allow ourselves to receive more of that, to feel more of that. Which is why it feels strange, but all at the same time feels like home when you make the shift from awareness into the energetic internal shift, into the action, into the new habit. But the way that I like to think about that is this origin story in Hinduism about, and I'm sure many other wisdom traditions have this type of idea or type of origin Genesis story. But I'll use this particular one. This is kind of where I learned it. So, when before anything ever was, it was one. right? They call it the singularity. And how things came to be and propel out from that singularity, that source, was the awareness, which is the masculine energy, became aware of itself, and the feminine, the creative impulse, the erotic, then was able, through the awareness of itself, create in its own image and reverberate out. So the awareness is the beginning of the recognition of the oneness, of the singularity within yourself. And what starts to happen internally, inherently, because they're intertwined, is a shift. It already happens the moment that you see yourself. It sees itself. The shift is energetic. It may not be automatic, the practice of having it come deeper and deeper into your, or higher and higher into your actual purview and belief system. That takes the action, but the shift is simultaneous. The action that we take to honor that shift, and that's where presence comes in. And I think that's one of the next step, let's say. It's awareness, and then practicing the feeling of being open to just simply experiencing the newness from the awareness, the new feelings, right? Like, it's like I said, it seems strange, but it also seems very familiar. When we bring in curiosity, we've lost curiosity. We say when we're children, be curious, but once you start hitting a certain age, curiosity goes out the door, play goes out the door. We forget that healing can also be play, because curiosity helps you to open up your mind. So when you become aware and you practice kind of getting comfortable with these new feelings, staying curious and being like, what is that? What is that little nudge? Practicing non-judgment, which means I'm not going to judge this feeling and say, oh, it's new, so it's bad. It's just new. It's different. And then finding what that expression is like as you allow yourself to be more and more present with these internal shifts. And what that could sound like is, man, I become aware that I'll use my own example. I became aware about 1.5 years ago that I like to control a lot of things. And it was very deeply ingrained in a daily habit. And when it dawned on me, I just had to sit with it. It almost felt like I was empty with that recognition. Like I had no idea how to be, now that I was aware of this thing that I was doing to myself, making myself miserable every day. And I just let it be. I said, well, I can't control it, because I just realized I control everything. So let me just let it be. Let me just not feel anything right now. And then I started to ask myself empowering questions, the curiosity of the mind. What would it look like if everything turned out in my favor? What would it look like if I allowed myself to have a bit more joy and fun in place of the things that I tried to control all the time? And what that starts to plant are little seeds that you have to water every day by practicing the awareness, opening yourself up to the experience of answering the question through action. So then when I would find myself wanting to control, I'd ask, can I bring myself joy in this moment? What does that look like? Okay, maybe that looks like taking a breath. For me, a lot of the times it's even moving and walking slowly. My need to control revs me up, and so I walk really quickly and I move really quickly, and I realize, okay, slow down, be with yourself in this moment. So there's a lot of little steps in the way. And so to go back, there's the awareness, opening yourself up to the newness of the experience, not bringing in non-judgment, bringing in curiosity, asking yourself empowering questions, and then taking action into using the body to feel what that answer is. And how does that resonate? And it's okay if one thing works here and then it doesn't the next day. Maybe it becomes a ritual. Maybe it becomes a ritual for a short time. The transition into a new way of thinking, believing, feeling, moving, acting, speaking, all of that is a transition, and it's allowed to change as you allow yourself to evolve. So it's like, think of it as this river, the process.
Yeah, and I really love how you share like the importance of being present to the senses of the
Yes.
experience, because I feel like
Yes.
that's what we've forgotten. And
Yes.
um, I notice that, a lot of us are walking around very disconnected from our bodies. And
Mm.
sometimes we can find connection through movement for short periods of time. Like
Mhm.
if we set the intention to work out or do yoga or dance, it gets us back into our body. But to live in a
Yeah.
way where we create a relationship with our body and
Yes.
allow the body's wisdom to speak to us, because you and I both know, like, there is the body, it speaks the truth. It just speaks the truth.
Plain and
And
simple.
yeah, I mean, body wisdom, it just is.
Yeah.
And and I also noticed that I acknowledge, I want to say, why we've become disconnected. Like, it's not just because of the distractions, but the other part to it is because a lot of us have had trauma to the body,
Yes.
either caused by somebody else or by our own self-sabotaging beliefs, like we don't like the way our body looks, so we don't pay attention to it anymore, or somebody hurt us, or we felt we didn't feel empowered in a situation, and we start to create these stories where we got sick, right? Like, we all of a sudden have all these reasons why we can't trust our body, or our body let us down, or we're not safe.
Yeah.
That so this is where this is why this work is so important. This podcast is the embodied healing self, and this is a pathway to open up to the senses of coming back home to who we really are
Yeah.
in our wholeness. And in the bigger picture, that is the seed that is being planted for the greater consciousness right now. Like, what's happening internally, breaking through these systems of what we have, or me personally, I think many of us have felt guilt and shame around, right? Just around the importance of just an self intimacy or self pleasure
Mhm.
in your own experience, learning your body, loving your body. It's
Mhm.
not something that a lot of people are willingly open to talk about. It's, and I have a teenage daughter now, right? So it's like,
Mhm.
so how, as I'm parenting her, it's like shifting the conversations that didn't happen when I was a kid. There was no conversation happening at all, just because our generation, and
Yeah.
realizing that and you and I see this bigger picture, that this internal shift or pleasure revolution, this internal awareness of receiving, is also being reflected on a bigger scale right now.
Totally. Mhm.
So I know that there are people listening that are wondering, how am I going to create a relationship with my body to where I even want to listen to it? And
Mm.
I'm wondering how you can open up, now that we understand what pleasure is and we understand why.
Mhm.
Wondering if you can just share for people who might be listening right now, who have an unhealthy, disconnected relationship with their body in any way at all.
Yeah.
What is a way that they can start to spark that curiosity, to
Sure.
lean into that trust?
Yeah. I believe in the power of the heart space, working with the heart as part of how uh, kind of the origin of the relationship with the body. The heart has an electromagnetic field that goes out feet away from us.
Mhm.
And this is all studied, this is all recorded.
Heart Math Institute.
Yeah, exactly. The Heart Math Institute. Total. Oh, I love. I was like looking up jobs the other day. I was like, how can I do research with you guys? Can I be a
Yeah, I
volunteer?
know. I love it. I totally geek out. I'm just like, oh my gosh, the heart knows before the mind does. Like, that's so
It's
crazy.
craziness.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the energy of the heart coats all of the cells in your body. You know, and what I think about when I read when I read coats the body, or I say coats the body with its energy, is it reverberates. The
Mhm.
body, its cells, what make up the cells are all energy, and they're all tuning forks for one another. And so the energy, that's this huge uh, energy space, when you put your attention on there, your consciousness onto your heart space, your consciousness, this expansive, infinite space of awareness, and you put all of that into your own heart, which has its own magnificent, huge energy field, it reverberates and resonates through the rest of the body. So if you feel as though you don't have a relationship with your body yet, and you're curious to, and you're wondering how do I do this, it seems like such a daunting and difficult thing to do, and maybe there's fear surrounding it, start with the heart. Meditations on the heart, simply even just placing your hand on your heart and feeling it beat. I love putting like pillows over my ears and then hearing the heartbeat, um, breathing and feeling your chest expand, the actual like movement of your heart space, this region, contract and expand. So first, developing this relationship with the heart, awakening your heart. And from there, it's a development of self-love, right? Ultimately, that's where it all stems from. It's the love of the self. And so cultivating a relationship with the body is really about the mind, the consciousness connecting with the physical, energetic beating of life within you. And starting from there, it's a beautiful place to start. One of the exercises that I used to do, and this was even before I started my thesis and really started diving into the scientific and wisdom traditions of sexuality and pleasure. I was going through my own experiential journey um, with my sexuality, and I still have same partner, but I had a wonderful partner who helped to facilitate that exploration. And one of the things I used to do in our play was focus on the heart. There's a lot of other things going on with the body in our interaction, but I was focusing on my heart. And I would allow myself then to draw this energy of the heart with, using your imagination, and draw it down to through my third chakra, which is the solar plexus right beneath the ribs,
Mhm.
and then draw that down into my second chakra, which is where all the reproductive organs are, your pelvis is. And I would let it kind of ruminate in there or resonate in there. So that's something that you can do to consciously move the energy of the heart through your body. Imagine a line, green line of energy, rainbow color line of energy, whatever you want it to be, being propelled out of the heart into the place of your body that you want to explore first. And maybe it's not always the most uncomfortable space, maybe it is, but allowing yourself to discover your body energetically through your imagination, through your conscious will and movement, using the heart energy to guide yourself to those places, and let it move, let it sing, let it resound in those places. And that gets you comfortable in a space of more love with these parts of our body, with our body overall, to help us then start to touch and love on ourselves and bring in more of the physical touch pleasure.
Yeah, the heart is really the gateway between the two. I hear
Totally.
you saying. And as I'm listening to you, it makes me curious, like, how do you practice your own self-awareness and presence in the presence of another person, in the balancing act of staying present with that person?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Oh, I've never been asked that question. Okay, let's see. That's a good one. Good job, girl.
next pleasure revolution podcast.
Yes. Okay. I love it. You know, it's interesting. I think the way that I would, when you're present to yourself, right, it allows you to be present with everything else. There exists no separation in presence.
That's how we started, oneness, right?
Exactly.
Oh, okay, keep going.
Yeah. So, you know, when you're in your play with your partner or partners, or even, you know, really just interacting with other people, when you can be present with yourself, which means that you're practicing being in your body, which means that you're using all of your senses to listen, to engage with how you are feeling in the moment and what you're aware of externally, perceiving externally, and then what's being mirrored internally. There becomes no separation between what you're feeling inside and what's being felt outside. It becomes a fully resonant experience. That's why practicing presence, practicing listening to your senses or connecting to your body's sensuality is such an important practice for yourself. It's how you engage and express in this world and how you connect to everything else, because there is no separation, like we said, in the presence. And that's how you deepen a connection with a whole other being.
Yeah.
You're able to resonate and feel their own resonance and take that in and feel what it's like to feel that person's energy within your space. And it becomes a dance of energies, of frequencies that you're able to feel when you first focus on your universe that's here in you.
Yeah, are you guys listening to this? Because like what you just shared, you know, I'm always like a big believer that our own healing is way more than just about our story, our discomfort, our pain. And as you were sharing, I just got goosebumps because it's like practicing that presence. Like we're not just talking about sexuality and pleasure here. We're talking about presence in every relationship in our lives. And think about the healing that extends beyond you and your partner,
Yes.
you and your family,
Yeah.
you in the next circle of the people you work with,
Yeah.
you in your friend circle, you in your community. Yeah. And how when we have an innate, like a healthy relationship with our body and with ourselves, how we then begin to ripple out that healing in our own presence.
Yes.
Just amazing.
I know, girl, I want to cry. I want to cry.
When you said that, I was like, oh my God, like that's it. We're done. Like we're done. We're done talking. Like there's nothing else to talk about. Like now we can talk about all the fun stuff because we just really just got to the core of why it matters. And not only that, but how we get to choose to accept this wisdom or not. Right? We get to choose. We can choose to go on believing that there's, you know, something not right about it, or that it's selfish, or that it's, or whatever. We can choose that, or we can be open to the possibility and the curiosity that maybe this tapping into this sensory experience within our own body wisdom, which is pleasurable because it's sensual, because it's stimulating senses, which most of us are walking around totally numb. I mean, my 14-year-old daughter says, like, everybody's so numbed out. Like, she refuses to be on her phone because she sees it, and it's just, you guys, I'm saying this with a heavy heart, but it's true. Like, we live in this world, which is why it's more important. It's more important for us to commit, devote, be curious about that time that we can spend to connect with our body. And why? Because if you guys are living in the same world we're living in right now, July 2020, like we're in this huge global awakening, this huge shift in consciousness, which many people are waking up to. And I have to be honest, a lot of people are so uncomfortable in their physical bodies right now. I have clients that are having lots of discomfort in their physical body because their soul is just waiting for their body to resonate where their soul is, right? So, and this is a way to heal, that we can come back to and connect. So, oh, that was just,
full body chills.
Wow.
Full body chills.
So you've got 5 principles of pleasure.
I was just, see, now we're resonating. I was
That's
just
right.
going to bring this See, this is the
now
present.
we're on the same thread.
Yeah, girl.
Share those, please.
Okay. So there's 5 pleasure principles that were crafted. So these are values that I infuse into my coaching practice, that I personally live by. But 5 particular principles came out they were crafted specifically for World Pleasure Day, which is this opening of the mind, celebrating of the body, and elevating the spirit of pleasure. And so the first pleasure principle is that pleasure is our birthright. We were born in these bodies, and we've already been talking about the body wisdom, and that there's an inherent spirituality to these bodies, these vehicles to return home in this life to our soul, to our soul's expression. The second pleasure principle is pleasure is a compass. We've been talking about the body wisdom once again as a navigator for what is resonant and what is numb. Where is the numbness? Where is the light? And all of that, like you said, the feeling, the feels, all of that is an expression that navigates us home. There's not one bad or, feeling numb isn't, we don't want to put a negativity or a judgment on these experiences, especially when we're working with ourselves. I like the language of, it's not as resonant, or it's not as soul enlivening. And so those are the types of go left, go rights that we use when we're in touch with our body and what resonates in the present moment, the pleasurable experience of aligning with our soul. The third pleasure principle is embodying pleasure as a path to fulfillment. And we basically
Love
just keep
that one.
I
love that one.
We keep
I mean, my listeners, like, how many people are seeking fulfillment?
Yeah. It's right here.
Yeah.
Right here. You live and you breathe in it.
It's the difference between knowing it and embodying it.
Yes.
It's like the difference between the awareness and that internal shift, right? It's embodying it is, you are what you're seeking. I love that one. That's my favorite.
That's one of my favorites too.
Well, and for me, it's because I know that many of my listeners, there's things that people are seeking: fulfillment and joy and freedom. And this is a pathway to all 3 of those.
Yeah. Oh, yes. The fourth pleasure principle is we have the freedom to consciously choose to experience pleasure. We have the freedom. We have the conscious awareness, the conscious ability to say yes to this wisdom, yes to listening, yes to being present, yes to accepting the things that maybe we've been in too much pain to want to experience. Yes to loving those parts of ourselves. Yes to saying that it's okay to change my mind about what I thought I was going to be or what people thought I should be.
Yeah.
Yes, it's okay to live in a way that feels good. So we have the freedom to consciously choose pleasure. And then the last pleasure principle is pleasure, putting it all together, is so vital to our emotional, mental, and physical
Oh,
well-being.
yeah. So I want to go there for a second because I just want to share, my background, which um, I started my health journey 15 years ago through a near death experience, which was really ultimately me being disconnected to the needs of my physical body and overworking.
Mm.
And then I stepped away from corporate into health coaching, which was like the first, like the lower chakras, right? Like the first started to heal the body with food and herbs and was wonderful. And then it's like I
Mm-hmm.
started realizing that, okay, I like I I eat really healthy. I mean, like plant food is medicine, and then I had a second health crisis, and that was really about. It was more of an energetic crisis that had to do with emotional wounding, and
Mm-hmm.
which is a whole other story about being an empath based on my own deeper needs, but really just really opening my eyes to the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, the spiritual body, the energetic body. And ultimately, through the past 12 years of coaching, yoga teacher, meditation teacher, all the things, right? To really understand what I now see as body wisdom, which I look more at the luminous body, which holds all of the different bodies. So
Mm-hmm.
the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, the energetic, mental. Ultimately, if we were to say, like, okay, eat healthy, okay, exercise, okay, heal your core wounds, okay, do you know what it all comes down to? That final thread, that final thing is if you're not connected to the source within you, none
Mm-hmm.
of that other stuff matters.
Totally.
Because why? Because you're not receiving any vital life force energy that wants to come through you. So
Mm-hmm.
you can do all the things. You can eat healthy, you can do yoga, you can meditate, you can do all the things. But if you do not fully embody, integrate, embrace all
Mm-hmm.
the way down to this, that where it all begins,
Mm-hmm.
which is like the full acceptance of that divine spark, that connection within you, none of that other stuff really matters. They're still band-aids is what I'm saying. They help.
Yeah.
Eating healthy is great. It raises your vibration, movement. I'm a big fan, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the deeper healing, so for my listeners, if you're sitting here thinking, I have great relationships and I've healed, I'm working on healing my subconscious, and I move and I eat well, I'm doing all the things and I'm still unfulfilled.
Hmm. Yeah.
There's something a little deeper.
Yeah.
And the willingness, what I see, and this is probably, I'm able to say this as a reflection through my world, is the willingness to receive and give and receive
Mm-hmm.
the pleasure that I'm worthy of, that is my
Mm-hmm.
birthright, and to
Mm-hmm.
embody it
Mm-hmm.
without having to explain it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I shouldn't have to explain myself to anybody, right?
Oh no.
Just,
No, no. It
yeah.
just is. It's what expands you. There's no reason, you don't have to make excuses or tell people, like, if it expands you, that's for you. and it reverberates out to other people. And it's most of those people who are telling you like, why are you doing that? It's usually because that reverberation, it knocks something in them that they're uncomfortable to see. And it's more about their discomfort than yours.
Yes, and the discomfort is the invitation.
Oh gosh, yes. That's
right?
why there's no like bad, like the discomfort is the invitation. Totally.
The resistance is the way.
Yeah, yeah. That's a perfect way to say it too.
Yeah, it is not, and we're not just talking about within our own bodies, but in life in general. It's like, I think this just goes to show that what we're experiencing within our own internal world is the way that the outside world is reflected back to us. And so why, again, it's so important to lean into that deeper connection.
Totally. And I do want to say one thing about, receiving this vital life force and connecting to source, and you're, letting that resonate out as pleasure for your vitality and fulfillment. There's the Kundalini.
Yes.
If your listeners are familiar with Kundalini, and the central line of that force flows through. That's really hard to say. Force flows through. Is the Sushumna. And the way that I like to think about it sometimes is when you don't bring your consciousness to yourself, to the fact that you are a channel and vehicle and expression of soul. I imagine like it's a little tiny straw. It's not like it doesn't run through you. You're alive, so it runs through you. But the work is to open it up and expand so it becomes this fully then embodied. It's just everywhere. There's no siphoning through a little straw. It coats every part of your body. That's kind of the way that I like to think about it for people who maybe think this practice isn't for me, or I'm, the stories that we tell ourselves that we're too broken, that, oh, I'm not connected, or I haven't been spiritual, so maybe I can't. That you are connected. You always have been. You always are. It's just bringing your consciousness to it and working then to expand it outward and inward and through all of you.
Yeah, and owning that oneness or that wholeness, not viewing those things as separate from you. And I'm just getting this vision that this would be a really fun thing for me to just like, Google, I guess. But you may know the answer to this, but I'm imagining that our energy fields and our auric fields, and I'm seeing this right now, like it shifts in pleasure. It expands. And I'm imagining that the colors shift, that the field expands. And are there any studies on that? That'd be super cool. With that Kirlian photography, or like where we could see like the shifts, that'd be super cool, huh?
Well, that'd be beautiful. I'm gonna look that up now, though. If it's not a thing, we're gonna have to make it a thing.
Right,
that would be amazing. Okay, I'm gonna look it up, and then I'm gonna hit you up later.
Yeah, can you like, I don't know. I just started, because it's really, the message that I've been hearing throughout this whole conversation is always moving back to that oneness, that divine energy within us, which again, with where we are in this point in time in the world, there is no better time right now, you guys, than to start healing your own relationship with yourself in whatever way is present for you in this moment. Whether for you it's eating more vegetables, or meditating more, or movement, or healing relationships with people. And I want to invite you as listeners to just notice if there's a relationship in your life that feels unhealthy, turning that gaze inward and noticing your own relationship with your own being, your own senses, your own sensual experience. And by that, what we mean is that body wisdom, like going in the body and being curious.
Yes.
And so what comes up for me right now is the next curious question. I'm full of curious questions today, so I'm totally putting you on the spot because you have no idea what I'm about to ask you.
Totally.
But there's a shadow to everything.
Yes.
And what I'm noticing is that there's a possibility for pleasure to be an escape. And
Yes.
so, and there may be other shadows that you may be aware of, but I want to invite you to talk a little bit about, for somebody who's, okay, I'm willing, how am I going to know whether, and again, like, we recognize that the shadow is part of the oneness, but how do I know when I'm in the healthy expression of pleasure, or if I'm going a little bit more to strictly just the physical addiction or avoidance, or, that just kind of help me navigate that curiosity around that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think in your question was the answer. Um, the the capital P pleasure that we've been talking about this past hour, there's no avoiding. There's absolutely, there's no more veils. There's no escapism. It's the ability to really be with yourself. And let me connect with this. Sorry for the dead air space.
No worries, no worries at all.
I think it comes back to the heart, right? Coming back to the heart. Does it resonate? Do you feel more deeply connected? Do you feel more in love with yourself? Uh, Happier with your choice in how you've chosen to experience pleasure in your body? Escapism isn't conscious. Distraction isn't conscious. What we're talking about is practicing the awareness, practicing being conscious, making choices from the conscious self. So when we choose to touch ourselves, share ourselves, explore our bodies energetically, actually physically, we bring more of our conscious self to the experience. So we know we will know then in our heart whether it's for us healthy, whether it's uplifting, or whether it's a distraction.
Yeah.
It's that combination of bringing your conscious will to every interaction. I believe in being open and healthy with your sexuality and your sexual exploration with partners. Bring your consciousness, your conscious choice. What is this relationship? How am I engaging? What is this? What am I giving to myself in engaging with this person or persons? Is it a distraction? Do I want the distraction? What am I receiving? Is it going to be regenerative? Is it uplifting? Asking ourselves these empowering questions as we even choose the healthy choices, the healthy foods we want to take and put in our body. All practicing conscious choice every day helps you to get more in touch with the choice that you make when you go to share your body, or self-pleasure. It's the choice between watching a documentary because you're going to take notes and you're going to incorporate that into your coaching practice, versus I'm going to just numb out for literally 8 hours on Netflix on The Floor is Lava. Yeah. I mean, so sometimes we do need a little bit, of a brain break for sure. But, there is the conscious thread that we bring to all of our interactions with the external world through the lens of the heart that lets us know whether it's supportive or not, and whether we're leaning into the shadow or not.
Thank you. That was a wonderful answer. Yeah, it all just comes back to presence.
Mm-hmm. That's totally.
Yeah, and such a gift. It's like another way to give ourselves permission to be present in a way that feels good and is part of the human experience.
Yes.
That we get to choose the freedom of the path that we take.
Yeah. We were put on this earth with conscious free will. And we can utilize that to discover, remember, come home to ourselves. That's what I truly feel.
Remembering. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
that's what I feel
remembering.
like life is. Yeah.
So, what are some of the daily practices that you are devoted to
Mm.
stay present with this intention?
Oh gosh, well the first thing is in the shower. The shower is like my jam. I call it the vortex. I just moved in with my partner. And so my old apartment, like it was just this like energy cauldron. Um, I think maybe because the bathtub's a little bit smaller, it's maybe not the same. We're trying to cultivate the same like energy and juge here in his place, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, there's something with water. And I
Yes.
was looking this up. I'm like, what is that?
I'm
What's
right.
going
Do you
on?
know you're like the third guest on the show to say that? Like, how many of us are intuitive insights come in the shower?
It's amazing. I need to get one of those like water pads, those things you can, because sometimes I like literally will jump out of the shower and get my notebook just
Yep.
right. I was looking this up and I think it has to do something with like the blocking out of like any kind of external noise. It's like a type of white noise and it centers you and makes you more present internally. Um, your five senses, rather than being used to engage externally, then all get pointed inwards. And then you get to discover an internal world. So, you know, I take time in the shower to breathe, to just be still. Um, that's a practice that I do pretty much every day. I shower every day. The practice,
Yeah.
the conscious, be present part is almost every day.
Yeah.
um,
No judgment here if you skip
um,
a day.
I was like, wait, maybe we should clarify that. um, I make it a point to plant my feet on the ground, like literally feel every inch of the sole of my foot on the floor. I wish I could get out more in, you know, on grass. I live in an apartment building, grass isn't too accessible. Um, but just really feeling grounded, feeling yourself planted on the earth helps you to just kind of click into your body.
Yep.
Um, and those are kind of like the two biggest practices that I do every day to be in my body. And then also just, I love practicing awareness. I am extremely conscious of the things I do. And I go through a lot of my own empowering questioning throughout the day. And what I've learned, the thing that's really freed me in my empowering question practice is not needing to have the answer now.
Yes, that's the golden nugget of wisdom right there. It's
Yeah.
because the attachment, it already loses its the space, like the sacred
Totally.
space. It already doesn't feel good once I with the attachment, right?
Yeah.
And plus the attachment is usually so limiting.
Oh, yeah.
Every time I'm attached
Every-
to a result and I let go, like it's so much bigger than what I thought
Yeah.
was. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Your
love that.
brain is this tiny, right? Like all the problems that it wants to solve are like
Yeah.
here. You got to get out.
Yes, I love that. I think that that is just such great wisdom just in general in life is just and by the way comes all the way back down to the curiosity of creating this pleasurable experience in the first place, right? Like even when you're there, like releasing the attachment to what it's supposed to look or feel
Yes.
like or
Oh,
and then
yes.
practicing that in our daily life. Um it does give freedom. And it's
Yeah.
not easy all the time,
Oh
but
gosh,
we practice
no.
it.
Practice makes easy. Makes it easier for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you said just really, you know, really quickly about, you know, practicing releasing and surrendering the idea that everything needs to look the same every time, or just because you think you know the sensation that'll arise when your partner touches a specific part of your body, that that's what it's going to be like every time. You're boundless. And every time you come into your body, every time you become aware of the different parts of it, there's a new awareness every single time and a new experience of it. We are boundless.
Yes. And that is joy and excitement and like
Ah,
curiosity and like
yeah,
looking at life. I mean, that, that just sounds fun, like a new
right.
experience every time.
That's life.
So yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom and your time today, and I want to invite you to share how people can find you, and I'm going to put the links in the show notes. But also any offerings that you have that you're sharing. I know I don't remember what it's called, World Pleasure Day is
Yeah.
coming up in August. So please share the details and remind us of your podcast again so people can listen in.
Okay, so I'll start with that. I have a podcast called Pleasure Revolution. We talk about pleasure, the body, its importance in our experience of life and our fulfillment. On there, I want to bring more guests on. I have one guest episode. I have my sonic rituals on there. I am a sound healer, so I bring in meditation and guided meditation and sound that I create to help elevate your sensual experience. And so that's Pleasure Revolution. You can check that out pretty much everywhere: Stitchers, iTunes, Spotify, Anchor.
Yeah.
And then World Pleasure Day. I'm so excited to be talking about this. World Pleasure Day is on August 18th, 2020. That's a Tuesday. It's a random day, but it's numerically powerful personally, and in a lot of, 8 and 1 coming together to elevate the consciousness of pleasure. And the event space, the main event, it will start at noon Pacific Standard Time, where I'll lead a sound healing. We'll have leaders in the mind, body, and soul of pleasure come in conversation. We'll make it experiential, so it's not just listening to these speakers. You're also going to be practicing some of the things that they'll talk about. We're inviting musical artists to come in and lead sensual experiences. We're going to get the senses involved. It's not
Wow.
just learning. We're trying to make this a fully embodied experience. And you can go to worldpleasureday.com to register. And this is all virtual. So you can listen.
Okay.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
all virtual. So you can listen in if you're at work, or it'll be recorded so you can watch it later. And yeah, worldpleasureday.com. You can go to my Instagram, One Thread Coaching. So that's ONE, One Thread Coaching. All the details are on there. And I think that's about it. Oh, one last thing too. If you feel really compelled by what you heard today and the pleasure principles really resonate with you, and you feel like you want to give your own story, your own consciousness, bring these pleasure principles alive within you, your life, and your community, you can become a pleasure ambassador and resonate this message out into your community through your embodiment. So you can become a pleasure ambassador through worldpleasureday.com there as well.
Oh, I love that. Just creating a pathway to share and expand more. That's awesome.
Totally.
And do you work with individuals or couples or?
Yeah, so I work with individuals. I work predominantly with women, and women entrepreneurs and healers have come to the forefront a lot more recently. And yeah, I have a couple of offerings. I think the most accessible offering I have, that I actually think I'll give you the link to, but you can find it on One Thread Coaching on my IG. I created a digital product called All of Me. They're immersive sonic rituals for self-pleasure. And when we think of self-pleasure, we go straight to masturbation.
Mhm.
Self-pleasure is the exploration of the soul, of the capital S self, through your sensuality. And so this is volume 1. There's going to be 3 volumes. I'm currently working on volume 2, but volume 1 is out and ready for you to utilize as a tool to connect to your body. The first volume is creating intimacy with your sensuality. So everything we talked about today is what you'll start to experience. You'll learn to listen. You'll learn to be present with your body. You'll learn to trust. So that way, when you move along in this series, you'll then, when you go to explore yourself physically through your own touch, you trust already. You trust the wisdom that will arise from the joy and pleasure of being and exploring your own self. So that's available, and there's 5 sonic rituals and a workbook to help you navigate through the sonic rituals. And I like to call them kind of like guided meditations for the grown and sexy, because they're super vibey. I do say so myself.
And plus, your voice is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, so those are the offerings that I have right now. I also do one-on-one coaching. You can go to, I think the best way to access me if you have any questions or if you want to schedule a discovery call is to go through my Instagram. My website is currently under construction. We're creating a pleasure portal where all of this will live, and you can have access to all different types of resources and the podcast, all of me. You can schedule coaching sessions there. So that's in the works. But if you're really curious, reach out to me on Instagram for anything else.
I love that. And I'm noticing that how fun would it be to have like a pleasure retreat?
I'm saying, oh my God, that, it's going to happen because I think about it pretty much every day. Full body chills when you said that, because
we're just gonna eat some blackberries with our eyes closed, and we're gonna do the whole thing, and we're just gonna, because you guys, this is what being human can be, right? Especially for, and I know I'm not alone in this, like as we evolve and expand spiritually, I went through this whole phase of like sort of being frustrated with the human experience, right? But then I realized like this is actually the joy and the pleasure of being human, because guess what, like your spirit body doesn't feel all of that.
Yeah.
So this is what we get to enjoy. So thank you so much for just like opening up this gateway, this path to so much more than just pleasure. It really is. It's like, as I heard you say, all these entrepreneurs are coming to me. I'm like, well, of course they are, because what it's doing is allowing them to expand their energy field, their ability to receive whatever it is they're calling in, whether it's clients or abundance, or that's probably a whole nother podcast episode too, by the way.
Totally.
Like the sacral chakra in abundance. Like, yeah, I discovered that one on my own. I was like, ooh, this is kind of a win-win.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Now I'm like totally blushing. I'm gonna start blushing, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you to the listeners for your willingness to listen in. And thank you to me for the courage to have the conversation, because it was a little bit out of my comfort zone, but very much needed. And I'm so grateful for our connection, that we kind of stumbled upon each other in San Diego, because I'm out in Florida. So, this is opposite coasts, and just thank you for what you're doing. I look forward to just hearing more and more. So
thank you for pushing your leading edge and exploring your leading edge, I should say, and opening up this space for yourself, for your listeners. And thank you, listeners, for opening up and receiving. And I hope that you all are well and blessed. May you savor your body's expression of joy.
I love that. That's beautiful. All right, sister. Thank you so much. And to the listeners, we'll see you next week.